How Picard's Vadic compares to Star Trek VI's General Chang's Star Trek. Picard featured a magnificent performance from Amanda Plummer as the changeling Vadic, following in the footsteps of her father Christopher Plummer's legendary performance as General Chang in Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country. Christopher Plummer was one of the most celebrated film actors of the 20th century, and he was arguably the most high-profile actor to take on the role of a Star Trek villain when he played the treacherous Klingon Chang. His Shakespeare-loving conspirator remains one of the very best Star Trek villains of all time. While not an A-list movie star like her father, Amanda Plummer has also enjoyed a varied, critically acclaimed career, notably starring in classic films like Pulp Fiction and The Fisher King. As Vadic, she's been idiosyncratic and aloof, smoking cigarettes and giggling as her ship, the Shrike, takes fire. Her performance in Star Trek Picard Season 3, Episode 7, Dominion, puts her squarely in the ranks of the all-time great Star Trek villains, right alongside her father. How Christopher Plummer's Chang compares to Amanda Plummer's Vadic. While Chang and Vadic are both great Star Trek villains, they couldn't be much more different as characters. In Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country, the final film to feature the cast of Star Trek, the original series, General Chang was a decidedly different kind of Klingon, eloquent and even sort of charming in his own way. His verbal volleys with Captain James T. Kirk William Shatner early in the film perfectly set up their final lethal battle. He was a worthy villain for the TOS crew to go out on. Vadic features none of Chang's charms. As she pursues Jack Crusher, Ed Spaliers, for reasons that remain unclear, her eccentricities are on full display. The rage that fuels her has driven her to the brink of madness, and Vadic's changeling discomfort in keeping the form of the solids she so hates is readily apparent. She's a volatile, unpredictable antagonist, perhaps the most chaotic Admiral Jean-Luc Picard, Patrick Stewart, has ever faced. The pantheon of great Star Trek villains is robust, with characters like Khan Noonien Singh, Ricardo Montalban, and Q John Delancey eventually becoming part of pop culture canon. Vadic may not be able to reach quite that level of notoriety, but she remains a fascinating character, arguably the strongest antagonist since Star Trek returned to television in 2017. Landing someone of Plummer's talent was a coup for the show, as she's loaded a massive amount of intrigue into a character that could have been a severe misfire in the wrong hands. Star Trek Picard Season 3, Episode 7, Dominion, revealed Vadic's horrifying backstory, a victim of horrendous war crimes at the hands of the Federation during the Dominion War. Tying her origins to arguably the Federation's darkest, most amoral era is a strong choice, perhaps finally forcing the Federation to grapple with its awful, desperate acts late in the war. It makes Vadic an important piece of Star Trek Picard, but also the wider Star Trek mythos. How Vadic's story ended in Picard, Vadic's origin story and master plans were revealed in Dominion, but the rest of Picard Season 3 didn't go well for the new fan-favorite antagonist. Picard's attempt to trap Vadic failed, and she and her crew manages to take over the Titan. She promptly began executing the Titan's crew, including Lieutenant Tveen. Thanks to some quick thinking and smart use of a personal force field by Jack Crusher, however, Tavok's plans are quickly thrown into chaos. A team that included Worf, Riker, and Deanna Troi were able to retake the Titan, and when Picard realized Jack and 7 of 9 were safe thanks to Jack's quick thinking, he jettisoned Vadic into space along with the rest of her crew. Vadic froze in the vacuum and was shattered when she crashed into the Shrike's deflector shield. In the rich lore of Star Trek, villains often play a pivotal role in shaping the philosophical and emotional journeys of the protagonists. Two of the most memorable antagonists in this vast universe are Vadic from Star Trek Picard Season 3 and General Chang from Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country. Both characters are relentless in their pursuit of destruction, yet they differ in their motivations, personalities, and the narrative arcs they inhabit. Comparing Vadic and Chang offers a window into the broader themes of Star Trek, from war and politics to personal vendettas and the ethical dilemmas of revenge. Ideological conflicts. Vadic's personal vendetta versus Chang's political vision. At the heart of Vadic's character lies a deep-seated personal vendetta. She is the leader of a faction of renegade changelings, a splinter group that seeks revenge for what they see as the betrayal and genocide perpetrated against them by Starfleet during the Dominion War. Vadic's motivations are rooted in personal suffering. She is driven by a thirst for justice or vengeance for her people, who were subjected to horrific experiments by Starfleet's Section 31. Her actions, though brutal, are born out of the trauma of having been violated and manipulated by an organization she sees as hypocritical and corrupt. In contrast, General Chang's ambitions are more political, though no less dangerous. As a high-ranking Klingon military leader in the undiscovered country, Chang represents the old guard of the Klingon Empire, fiercely opposed to the peace treaty that would end hostilities between the Klingons and the Federation. Unlike Vadic, Chang isn't driven by personal revenge, but by ideology. He embodies a warrior ethos that sees peace as a threat to the Klingon way of life, which is steeped in honor, combat, and dominance. For Chang, the destruction of peace is not merely a selfish act, but one he believes is necessary to preserve the Klingon Empire's identity. While both characters are antagonists, their motivations draw a clear line between personal vengeance and political ideology. Vadic's emotional intensity and personal pain are palpable, making her a more tragic figure. Chang, on the other hand, presents as a more calculated and philosophical villain, whose loyalty to his people's traditions blinds him to the possibilities of peace. Theatrical presence and style. One of the most striking similarities between Vadic and Chang is their theatricality. Both characters exude a certain gravitas and flair that makes them larger-than-life figures, almost Shakespearean in their villainy. This is particularly evident in General Chang, who often quotes Shakespeare during battle, most famously during the final confrontation with Captain Kirk and the crew of the Enterprise. Chang's love for the bard adds a layer of complexity to his character. He revels in the drama of combat, seeing war as a stage on which he can perform his ideals of honor and duty. Vadic, though less literary, is no less theatrical. Her menacing presence, combined with her ability to shape-shift, allows her to play with the expectations and fears of her enemies. Her voice, mannerisms, and often unsettling calm create an air of unpredictability. In many ways, she revels in the psychological torment she can inflict, using her shifting form to unsettle her opponents and heighten the tension in her encounters. While she doesn't quote Shakespeare, her speeches about the suffering of her people and her hatred for Starfleet are delivered with the kind of intensity that makes her seem almost like a force of nature. Yet while both characters thrive on theatricality, their styles differ in significant ways. Chang's bombast and enjoyment of the intellectual game of war stand in contrast to Vadic's raw emotional drive. Where Chang is composed, almost aristocratic in his demeanor, Vadic is unhinged, driven by a personal rage that makes her more volatile. This difference in style reflects their respective motivations. Chang, the ideological warrior, remains cool and detached, while Vadic, the vengeful changeling, is consumed by her own pain and fury. Intelligence and manipulation. Both Vadic and Chang are not just brute forces. They are cunning and manipulative in their pursuit of their goals. General Chang orchestrates an elaborate conspiracy to ensure the peace talks between the Klingons and the Federation fail, using espionage and assassination to destabilize trust. His plans are intricate, involving several layers of deception, including framing Captain Kirk for murder. Chang's genius lies in his ability to manipulate the larger political situation to achieve his ends, without needing to engage in direct combat until the very end. Similarly, Vadic proves to be a master manipulator, particularly in her ability to outwit Starfleet and the heroes of Picard. She plays on their fears and uncertainties, using her knowledge of Starfleet's inner workings to stay one step ahead of them. Her manipulation is more personal than political,